Hello, I'm Jonasz Czerwiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. First, Moldova, now Georgia, countries with a Soviet past at a crossroads. One possible path is European Union, prosperity and democracy. The other option, unfortunately, is sliding back towards Russian standards. With the upcoming elections in Georgia, all eyes are now on Tbilisi. Who is going to win? What will it mean for the region? We're going to talk about this and more with our guest today, Victor Kipiani, chairman at GeoCase. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you.
So what do you make of the latest statements by President Saakashvili during a pro-European rally? She said that, well, the opposition parties may not be perfect, but they can actually get together and cooperate in order to get Georgia into Europe, unlike the ruling Georgian Dream party. Do you think this appeal will be successful?
And this is very true. The president of Georgia still continues to be the driving force behind the Georgian opposition. Although we all appreciate that she's not a partisan figure, but over the recent period of time, her engagement with Georgian politics has been very much vocal and very much articulated. The latest document, which we have to reemphasize in terms of its importance and significance, is Georgian Charter, which the mainstream Georgian opposition parties have signed. What that charter provides for radical, substantial, and fundamental reforms to bring Georgia in line with its pro-European aspirations. So, Madam President, she continues to play that vocal role. She will continue on the election day and in the aftermath period. So, again, to reemphasize that perhaps for some Georgian voters, Georgian opposition is not in a best shape, but still in a much better conditions than it was, say, 2-3 months ago.
To what extent do you think we can count on the elections being fair? Do you think there is a heavy risk of interference in favor of the Georgian Dream party?
Yeah, it's the most critical the question. Of course, it's really very hard to prejudge about the transparency and fairness of the elections. First point to recall that these are the first elections since Georgia got the candidate status. And also, it's important to remind to the audience that this would be the first elections run by a completely new electoral system, which is a proportional system. Besides, there would be the very heavy application and wide the application of sort of the electronic voting system. So we yet have to see how that goes. But,
do you think the system is watertight? Are there any reports that the system might actually be tampered with?
There is some controversy and some doubts about the reliability of the system. There are pros and cons, frankly speaking, and that what causes certain concern. Not to forget that a company which has been engaged by the government to run the system is quite dubious in terms of its reputation. But that's something we have to bear in mind. So we'll see. It's really have to have a definitive clear view before the election day. But what is most important when you speak about the fairness, when you're asking me about fairness and transparency of the elections, it's about the hybrid war, or I would even call it psycho war, which the Georgian government has conducted on its own voters. And starting with different rhetorics, messages, toxic messages in relation to domestic politics. You've mentioned the banning the opposition parties, the possibly, announcing the criminal, the prosecutions, etc. And all those the message boxes, they go at the background of very, let's say, dubious and anti-European statements, which Georgian Dream is conducting. And last but not the least point, when we speak about the importance of Georgian elections, we have to match it necessarily and point necessarily to they have very heavy engagement of geopolitics. And that being said, of course, these elections would be a very critical testing point, not just for Georgian democracy, but for a range of foreign actors who are competing for, let's say, geopolitical influence in Georgia and beyond Georgia.
So how is it that the Georgian Dream party is polling at the level that it is now? Is it just because the opposition is so divided? Because it is quite hard to imagine people voting for a party which openly says we're going to ban opposition parties. Well, normally, if there is a party that has authoritarian tendencies, they introduce those gradually, perhaps even hypocritically, saying this is all about efficiency and all that. But here we have President Saakashvili announcing to everyone around, yeah, we're banning the opposition. So why do you think there are voters who still want to hand over the power democratically to a party that is announcing anti-democratic future for Georgia?
Listening to your framing the question, I again realize how much the inconsistent those statements are with the declared course of Georgian Dream to be the pro-European party. Banning the opposition, the criminal prosecutions, various other the incidents or accidents which are happening with the Georgian opposition from the Georgian Dream on a daily basis. Of course, that creates a big question about the genuine spirit of those statements. Yesterday, by the way, we have a very large pro-GD, pro-Georgian Dream, pro-governmental rally, but that should not, make no mistake, that rally being organized in the spirit of the West legacy, Soviet legacy. So that should not confuse anyone in terms of having a proper judgment how much support Georgian Dream enjoys in the country. Besides, we have different polls, and those polls present different realities on the ground. Georgian Dream still claims and continues claiming, almost based on those polls, on certain polls, of course not all, but on certain polls, getting the constitutional majority. But what that constitutional majority means, that means 113 votes or seats out of 150. That's practically unimaginable, that's practically incredible if you take into account the public feelings and public sentiments on the ground. Whether it would be realistic for Georgian Dream getting a simple parliamentary majority, well, again, it depends on the consistency of Georgian opposition, because I'm always continuing saying that the ingredients are there. And those ingredients are the public feelings, and those public feelings have to be translated into the real and actual results. And therefore, these elections, as we're saying, are not just elections in terms of the future composition of the parliament, but those elections having the meaning of the referendum. And that referendum would have a huge impact on Georgian foreign policy for at least several decades to come.
But there is an inherent risk in referenda like that. I mean, when you look back on Moldova, everyone said, okay, so but there is going to be, everyone was confident that the European option would win by a wide margin. It barely won, and that's because there was likely a lot of Russian interference. In Moldova, the government is pro-Western, and they said, look, we have a problem with this. But in Georgia, when we have the Georgian Dream Party, if there is interference against the European Union, well, the current government is not going to complain about any sort of Russian money flowing in, for example, to bribe voters. So do you think this might actually be a major risk? Like you said, the ingredients are there for the opposition perhaps to win, but what if they are actually beaten in a way that's simply not fair, and there is no adequate monitoring?
Yes, of course, there is always what if. And when I'm saying that, let's avoid having any prejudged conclusions. Of course, it's for the sake of the cautious optimism, to put this in a way. But okay, with of course, Russian political money always plays an important role, especially it's near abroad, as the Russian connotation goes on. But with all my due respect to our Moldovan colleagues and partners, an interesting thing about Georgia that it's about quite strong disconnect. Let me put this very softly and diplomatically, disconnect between Georgian Dream as a ruling party and the civic society. And that robustness of civic society, that vigor of the civic society, of course, creates preconditions, for more optimistic judgment in that respect. Besides, when we speak about a negative engagement, we don't have to overlook a positive engagement. And that positive engagement is reflected into massive presence of foreign observers on the ground and very close optics by our European partners and by United States of America in relation to Georgian elections. So I would just make a very strong appeal to anyone at in rank and file of Georgian Dream. Gentlemen, not make any mistake. The public moods are quite obvious, quite definitive, so don't think about any wrong moves and any wrong steps or any wrong actions after the elections. I very much hope that on the night of 26 or in the morning of 27, we will be facing a different reality on the ground.
So this indeed is an opportunity to be embraced by the civic society. At this stage, it is possible to determine the country's future at the ballot box. What is going to happen? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. Victor Kipiani was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight. And I'm Ina Sharavinsky. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.